plan. Abortion, Clinton is pro-choice. Welfare, after 2 years, recipients would have to take jobs. And Clinton vows to improve education, job training, and child care, the most detailed domestic agenda of any candidate.
3 people have handed in their test papers. 2 of them are blank. Only Bill Clinton has filled out the complete exam.
However, not everyone gives him passing grades, especially on the economy.
That is the only way to get economic growth.
Where Ronald Reagan saw lower taxes as the engine of growth, Clinton sees government investment. He'd spend $50 billion more a year to revitalize industry and solve America's urban and social problems.
Some of his proposals to deal with them are interesting in the direction he wants to go. What inhibits him? He doesn't have any money to pay for them.
Clinton wants to finance his plans by higher taxes on just the rich and by trimming government payrolls and better management. Bloated entitlement programs are largely untouched, and so is the deficit.
There's no way to cut expenditures that he's talked about, and there's no way to raise taxes that works that he's talked about.
The trouble is, if a politician talked seriously about raising taxes on the middle class, for instance, where it counts, he'd probably never even have made it this far, to the convention here. Jack Smith, ABC News, New York.
This is Barry Dunsmore. Governor Bill Clinton's foreign policy credentials are meager. As a Rhodes Scholar, he attended Oxford University in England, and he served for a time on the staff of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Philosophically, Clinton believes the U.S. should take a leading role in world affairs, but he stresses that foreign policy cannot be detached from domestic policy.
If we're not strong at home, we cannot lead the world we have done so much to make. In today's world, foreign and domestic policy are simply inseparable.
On specific issues, Clinton appears to support much of the Bush administration's policy with reservations or modifications. He supports the Gulf War, but not Iraq policy before or since. Aid to the former Soviet Union, but says it's been too slow. Major arms control reductions. NATO and U.S. troops in Europe, but would bring home about half the 210,000 now there. The Middle East peace process, but would be less critical of Israel. On other issues, he would cut the defense budget, but not radically, $50 billion over 5 years. On Japan, he would strongly enforce trade laws, but says 75% of the trade deficit is the lack of a U.S. economic strategy. On South Africa, he would maintain sanctions until a true multiracial democracy is established. On the basis of those positions, Governor Clinton is clearly a centrist, comfortably within the mainstream of this country's foreign policy establishment. Put less charitably, Clinton may seem like warmed-over George Bush without experience. During the Cold War, that lack of experience would have been a major liability. But today, not to be seen as an intellectual prisoner of the Cold War may be an asset.
In 1992, we must look forward, not backward. I seek not to be the last president of the 20th century, but the first president of the 21st century.
In short, the Clinton calculation is that for most voters, the age and experience of the finger on the nuclear trigger is no longer relevant. Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, Washington.
And when we come back, the delegates to the Democratic Convention and why they are different from the average American.
The time, morning.
I'd like to wake up to this coffee in the morning.
The place, the 5-star area day.
Politicians are forever polling Americans to find out what they think and why. Well, ABC News has turned the tables a bit by polling the delegates to the Democratic National Convention. Lynn Scher reports that these delegates think differently than the average American, or even the average Democrat.
On the whole, the Democratic delegates arriving in New York are satisfied with their candidate, enthusiastic about working for him, and convinced he can win in November. That's why they're here. And as usual, these committed activists take more extreme positions on the issues than many of the folks they left behind. But there's another difference. The Democratic delegates are not only more liberal than the country and the rest of the party, they're more liberal than the ticket. For example, only 1/5 of all Americans and of all Democrats favor raising taxes to cut the deficit. Bill Clinton only wants to raise taxes on the rich, but nearly half the delegates want a tax hike.
I'd have to be for it. I'd like to eliminate the deficit. I realize the party may not assume that position, but I personally would not be opposed to it.
As for cutting taxes on business to stimulate the economy, nearly half of the general public and nearly half of the Democrats agree. So, with restrictions, does Bill Clinton. But less than a quarter of the delegates agree.
I think they've had cuts enough. I think they've been accorded enough privileges.
Most also support federal funding for abortions, in sharp contrast to the party and the general public.
I'm pro-abortion with no restrictions.
Demographically, they are richer, better educated, and less victimized by unemployment than the folks back home. Just over half are women, the same as the nation. 17% are black, a higher proportion than the rest of the country. And like the two men they're trying to elect, more of them are baby boomers and middle-aged than America as a whole. One final difference. We asked the delegates how they felt about this statement. The Democratic Party keeps losing presidential elections because it doesn't pay enough attention to the problems of the middle class. Most of the delegates disagreed, but Bill Clinton agrees, and it is a sign of their pragmatism that he is the man these delegates have nominated to be president this year. Forrest?
Thank you, Len. There is other news to report this evening. Pope John Paul was admitted to a hospital in Rome today. He told the faithful in St. Peter's Square that he will undergo tests for an intestinal problem that may require surgery and that may be related to a stomach wound he suffered during an assassination attempt in 1981. In the war-torn city of Sarajevo, a breakthrough for international relief efforts. UN Democratic Convention. Chief Foreign Correspondent Pierre Salinger says that is because Europeans have a love-hate attitude toward American politics, as well as toward their own.
1, 2, 3.
When the parliamentary election took place here 3 months ago, the British people were seeing American political tactics come abroad. The normally reserved British campaign was replaced by razzmatazz of an American-style rally thrown by the Labour Party. Conservative Party leader Prime Minister John Major adopted the American photo opportunity, visiting a department store with only 20 customers and 200 journalists. Why are the British copying the United States?
We just love the showmanship, the spectacle. And just as people always say in Britain, we do coronations better than anyone, you do party rallies better than anyone.
But Europeans largely do not respect the American political process. Here, political parties, not the public, select the national leaders. Europeans believe that in the United States, personality more than issues is the deciding factor.
The qualities you need to go through the trials of a campaign have nothing to do with the qualities that it takes to lead a state or a government or even a local government.
Europeans feel their system produces more qualified and experienced leaders like Margaret Thatcher, Helmut Kohl, and François Mitterrand, who all had to spend years in political and government service before they were selected. However, recent elections in Italy and France show that while many Europeans don't respect the American political system, they are becoming frustrated with politicians in their own countries.
So while Europeans are not wild about American politics, and in many countries not about their own, they will be looking at the Democratic Convention because, if nothing else, it will be a great show. Pierre Salinger, ABC News, London.
Well, to Europeans, it might be a great show, but to New Yorkers?
No reason to be impressed. No, it's just another event.
We come back. ABC's Judd Rose on what awaits the Democratic delegates on the streets of New York.
Democratic Convention. Jennings, Brinkley, the 92 vote. Live at 9:30 Eastern tomorrow.
So it is all about to begin. New York City is ready. Clinton and Gore are ready. And primetime live correspondent Judd Rose is also ready. Judd and a great many others have spent this past week trolling the city for the sort of stuff only Judd can best explain.
Live from New York, right here and right now. Come on and check it out. Right here and right now.
Right you are, and right this way, all you delegates. Gotham's glad you're back.
So you're pretty excited about the Democrats coming to town, or what? No. Yeah? Why not? You don't seem very impressed. No reason to be impressed. No. It's just another event.
Well, this is the third time the Democrats have come here in just the past 16 years. The last time was 1980, so a hint to delegates. If you're driving to Madison Square Garden, remember, the city that never sleeps never moves either.
Take a subway. It's a great way to travel in New York.
Good advice from a guy who takes a helicopter to work. But you might try I say you might try the subway. Think of it as the Disneyland monorail with more exotic smells. New York's taxi drivers really know their way around the city. Unfortunately, it's not this city. Can you tell me how to get to the garden?
Garden?
The garden.
Which garden?
You meet people here from countries you never even heard of, nobody even knew existed. Yesterday I'm in a cab, the driver's from Sri Lanka, and he was driving like he was gone there.
It's true. A ride in a New York cab is enough to make even Bill Clinton inhale.
These boys traveled a long way to come to the convention, and all work and no play is a dull boy.
Don't worry, Democrats. Remember, they used to call New York Fun City.
Enjoy it for what it is. It's a big, happy, interesting place.
Yeah, sure, Regis. New Yorkers may not know Clinton too well, but they're real familiar with Gore. Last week alone, there was a minor riot. During just one 24-hour period, there were 15 murders. People here are so used to being robbed, they routinely put signs in their cars urging thieves not to bother.
All the stories, you know, some things happen, but what are you going to do, you know?
Well, leave maybe. A poll taken not long ago showed a full 60% of those who live here want to get out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. On second thought, don't come.
Too late, they're here. So for the next few days, people from all walks of life will be crowded into a small space, pushing and shoving and making noise and trying to create order out of chaos. You know, come to think of it, this is the perfect place for the Democrats. Judd Rose, ABC News, New York.
Every second of an
On the next Good Morning America, day one of the Democratic Convention with Texas Governor Ann Richards and former Governor Jerry Brown. Join us here on the next Good Morning America.
Finally tonight, we have a program note for you. Peter Jennings and David Brinkley will anchor ABC News coverage of the Democratic Convention all this week. The coverage begins tomorrow night at 9:30 Eastern Time, and it includes the convention's keynote address. But that is our program for tonight. I'm Forrest Sawyer. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
From New York, this has been World News Sunday. This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.